On today's episode, we have our Week 8 running back rankings. No buys this week, just elite vibes. Ranking the running backs this week was much nicer than last week because everyone's pretty much going, and some guys who have had kind of a brutal go of it this season finally have some good matchups and good opportunities. And I'm excited to see guys coming off of a bye that are hopefully a little bit healthier. So I'm excited to get into that, Aidan. Feels kind of weird to be recording on a Wednesday. Right? This is the first time we've been recording on a Wednesday in ages.
I think this is the first time since maybe like the off season.
Yeah.
This is new to us.
Yeah, a little different. But the reason I'm calling that out is because it's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We do not have all of the injury information. A lot is going to be changing. People are going to be moving up and down the rankings. So keep that in your mind, mean team, and subscribers at home before you troll us in the comments saying our information is wrong or this guy ended up playing. We're coming to you Wednesday at 5 p.m. So a lot is going to change over the next couple days. If you have any start-sit questions over the course of the week, feel free to drop it in the comments. We will be active there helping you out as well. Aidan, our format here is pretty simple. I've ranked the top 42 running backs this week, and I've broken them into tiers. As I go through each running back and kind of give you my thoughts, Aidan is going to stop me, talk about some guys that he's starting this week, talking about some guys that he's fading this week. Again, if you have any specific start-sit questions, please drop them in the comments below. But before we get into the running back rankings, we want to thank you for supporting the Regression to the Mean podcast. We appreciate you for listening and being a part of the Mean team. If you haven't had the chance yet, we'd appreciate it if you could go ahead and hit the subscribe button, like this video, and again, drop any of your questions and comments, call-outs, roasts, whatever it may be in the comments below. We are marching towards our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season, and we appreciate you for tagging along. And again, all of our content is free. Aidan, you ready to do this, man?
Let's rock and roll, brother.
Starting off with our top running back this week, it is none other than Christian McCaffrey coming here as RB1. McCaffrey played on every single snap on Monday night against Minnesota. He has a friendly matchup against a rush defense that has given up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs over the past month. It looks like Sam Darnold's starting. I'm kind of bummed Keegan's not recording because he had some thoughts on Sam Darnold. I have some thoughts as well. I would envision a massive pass-catching day for CMC. Remember what CMC was doing when Darnold was just peppering him with targets to start the year in 2019? It was pretty voluminous.
Yep.
Yeah. At running back 2 here, I have Alvin Kamara. So he has by far and away it's insane.
Speaking of voluminous, here we go, dude. This is ridiculous what's happening.
He has by far and away the best role in fantasy since returning from his suspension. He's averaging 25 expected fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks. A clean 4 points better than Christian McCaffrey. He is averaging close to 9 targets per game. The Colts have given up the second most fantasy points per game to running backs over the past month. He is primed for a big week. Wow. He has been a massive value to fantasy managers that drafted him in the 6th or 7th round. That milk is going to be served piping hot and poured on my face because I faded him pretty tough.
Hey, yo.
I faded him pretty... Oh, no. Yeah, that's going to have to stay in the episode. That's a bummer. I just got paused. Okay. Coming in at running back 3 here is Travis Etienne. He's averaged 23 fantasy points per game over his last 4 with RB9 usage. He currently leads all running backs in attempts this season. Pittsburgh has been middle of the road against RBs this year, but Etienne is locked and loaded as a weekly top play with his combo of usage and efficiency. Etienne and Kamara, both guys that have just rewarded fantasy managers handsomely. The 4th guy here, and you got to keep him in his own tier, in the top tier, right? But a guy that I'm down 2 spots on, he is ranked as the RB2 by expert consensus rankings over at Fantasy Pros. I have him here at RB4. That's Austin Eckler, Aidan. So regression is hitting Austin Eckler pretty hard.
That's an understatement. Yeah. That's an understatement.
Last year, he averaged an absurd 7.5 targets per game. This year, he is coming in around 4 targets per game. Eckler is still clearly not 100% coming off that high ankle sprain. He's still had an RB13 usage since returning from injury, so he's still getting looks. He's still very much involved. He has a good role. He has a matchup against a Bears D that's kept running backs in check over the past 4 weeks. He is going to need TDs or receptions to continue being ranked as a top 5 play. Hopefully for us that drafted him, we get both of those on Sunday night. I'll pause here after the top 4. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just starting with Eckler there, I've got the same concerns with Eckler. The Chicago defense, as you mentioned, has been pretty strong the last couple of weeks. They got absolutely gashed the first week, couple weeks of the season. So if you look at them in terms of like running back points per game allowed, like it doesn't look great. They're about mid-pack, but you look at the last couple of weeks, like Josh Jacobs was completely shut down last week. He had a season low 5 fantasy points. And I see that being a tough matchup for him, unless, like you mentioned, he's pretty involved in the passing game or is hitting home on touchdowns.
Yeah.
The Chargers' offense has just been really confusing. It feels like we've kind of talked about it. It went from like overly conservative to like over the top aggressive, and we need that offense to be somewhere in the middle. Like there's a happy medium there, which I think would benefit Austin Eckler greatly. So you could talk me into moving him down to running back 8, running back 9 this week, especially looking at some of the other guys that you're going to cover in a minute here. But like, there's also the other like it's Austin Eckler, man. When this guy is on in terms of fantasy, like it's the only guy that can really keep pace with him would be Christian McCaffrey and maybe Alvin Kamara in terms of like the pure PPR and like 3-down workhorse upside. So Eckler's a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, you're never starting Austin Eckler. Like he's a set it and forget it guy every single week that he's healthy, but there are some concerns there, and I think your ranking reflects that versus ECR.
Yeah. You got to play Eckler, and looks like you had a frog in your throat there. You made it through.
Dude. I keep trying to get it out. I'm like, come on, fight.
You made it through, but that's the top 4: McCaffrey, Kamara, ETN, and Eckler. I feel like are their own tier. Moving on to kind of the next tier of guys that I have. RB5, I have DeAndre Swift. He has RB7 usage in the past month and RB15 in production. So I'll take a pause here. So all of our rankings are points per reception, so full point PPR. And also, I'm going to reference last 4 weeks as kind of a baseline of performance. Again, we've had 7, which is great, but defenses are getting better. Roles are consolidating. I just feel like more recent data is more directional and telling of where we're going over the course of the season. Like Aidan already hit on it, how the Bears defense just looks a lot better. I've been kind of like an example. I've been harsh on the Seattle defense. Well, Seattle gave up a bunch of points the first couple weeks of the season. They've been pretty stout since. So at some point over the course of the year, these numbers start to kind of, I'd say, stabilize, and we have a better understanding of these defenses. So I'm going to be referencing a lot of the last 4 weeks with these guys. So Swift, RB7 usage the past month, RB15 in production. His PPR targets and rush attempts give him a strong weekly floor, but it's hard for him to hit his ceiling projections, Aidan, when his QB scores all of the rushing touchdowns. So it's hard to see the ceiling with Swift.
It's a bit tricky.
A lot of volume, though. At running back 6, we have the Pollard posse, Tony Pollard. He's a top 12 RB in terms of usage, but he has low-end RB2 production over his last 4 games. The hope is that he's feeling a little bit more like himself after the bye week. Remember, he's recovering from a tightrope ankle surgery, so hopefully feeling a little more refreshed. Keeping our fingers crossed the Cowboys' O-line is healthier, too. He's facing off against the Rams defense that just got gashed by Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Fingers crossed here. This is not necessarily the easiest matchup in the world, but it's a good spot for Tony Pollard in the Pollard posse. So keeping our fingers crossed. We were big Tony Pollard truthers at the beginning of this year. It is not necessarily hit home in efficiency, but the role's been great. So hopefully we just get a little bit more efficiency.
Wait, we've got a late arrival.
Whoa.
Late waiver ad. He is here. Sorry to interrupt your spiel, Shaun. Catch me up. Give me the TLDR.
Wow. I feel like this is like Vince Vaughn in Dodgeball showing up.
Wow.
He was at the airport and here he is, Keegan. Whoa. Welcome to the show.
I just heard a microphone go off and I was like, what is going on here? We've made it through 6 running backs, Keegan. This is
Perfect.
amazing. Okay, so at RB7 we have.
You're almost just in time for Breece Hall on the dot in your new green dang hat.
Yes.
It's pretty perfect.
It is spectacular the time. It's serendipitous. All right, that's where we're at here. At running back 7 here we have Saquon Barkley. He's facing off against the New York Jets. I have him 3 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. So since he's returned from ankle injury, he's had top 3 usage with top 12 production. He looks a lot more effective than Austin Eckler does at this point. I don't know about Daniel Jones' status going into this game against the Jets. I don't know if he's going to play. I mean, Keegan might know, but I expect Saquon to have a nice game regardless. The Jets currently have given up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs over the past 4 weeks. So I like Saquon a lot in this matchup.
I believe Danny Dimes still has yet to participate in a practice since the neck injury all the way up to today. So that is not looking great for his chances to play. Nonetheless, Saquon is Saquon.
Did he isn't he allowed to participate?
Terod's looked fine.
Yeah, Terod has looked fine. But he's been allowed to participate, right? But he's not allowed to get hit. Isn't it like a non-contact situation? Like he's been throwing.
I believe so.
So he hasn't been cleared for contact from the doctors yet, is the story.
It's not great.
But Tyrod's looked pretty good. That tape he put on last weekend was against the Commanders was pretty nice. Not gonna lie. He's making
with the
some
exception
good
of the second half against Arizona, Daniel Jones has looked like a shell of himself in that offense compared to Tyrod Taylor. So, yeah, I don't think that I wouldn't really say quarterback really affects Saquon's, floor or ceiling.
Yeah, Saquon's going to do his thing regardless. At running back 8, I have Breece Hall. RB2 usage with RB1 production over his past 4 games. Breece is probably the most efficient and effective running back in the league right now. If his touches and snaps continue to stay in this RB1 land where they were before the bye, I think he's a borderline top 5 play weekly. This week he faces off against a Giants defense that has been playing better as of late. Like I think Wink Martindale's done a good job, but they're still middle of the pack against running backs. This is a solid matchup. Breece should eat. Keegan, what should we expect from Breece this weekend?
All I had in my notes for Breece was Breece. Another week, another explosion opportunity for Breece's PCs, Holland Goats, whatever you want to call them. Fire him up anywhere and everywhere.
It's a good matchup for him.
Yeah. RB2 usage with RB1 production. If we just tip those numbers up, if we just start to get him more snaps and more carries, which we've seen a lot more of, like Dalvin Cook's basically been phased out of this offense. Breece is going to be in this top 5 land. I wouldn't be shocked if we're ranking Breece Hall ahead of like Austin Eckler and Tony Pollard soon. That's just kind of where we're at with Breece, in my opinion. At running back 9, I'm taking a bit of a leap here. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Las Vegas Raiders. It's 4 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. So this ranking is contingent on David Montgomery not playing. Again, we are recording this episode Wednesday afternoon. The Lions play on Monday, so they don't start practicing until Thursday. So we don't know if Montgomery's going to be a limited participant, full participant, or a non-participant. I'm banking on Gibbs starting and seeing the bulk of the carries like he did in Week 7 against the Ravens. If that's the case, he's going to be facing off against a Raiders rush defense that has given up 25 fantasy points per game to running backs over the last 4 weeks. I think Gibbs is a smash play this week. So let's keep the gravy train rolling with Jahmyr Gibbs, boys. Like that'd be pretty ideal for all of us that drafted him.
Yeah, just to add on to that, it doesn't make a ton of sense for Monty to play this week. They have a bye after this week. And I kind of feel like that was the plan all along, to keep Montgomery out. So, yeah, like you said, barring Montgomery being out against a Raiders defense that has been, I think it's bottom 5 off the top of my head against running backs in terms of fantasy points per game. We just saw what Deontay Foreman did to them. We could be in for a massive Jahmyr Gibbs day, back-to-back, absolutely smash plays for Jahmyr Gibbs, which would be awesome. I could let Dan Campbell officially off the hook for his crimes through the first 6 weeks of the year.
So then at RB10, I have Raheem Mostert, RB11, Isiah Pacheco, RB12, Kenneth Walker, and RB13, Jonathan Taylor. So with Raheem Mostert, even with the return of Jeff Wilson, Mostert continued to dominate the backfield. He didn't produce much, but who does against the Eagles? But he gets a much friendlier matchup against the Patriots this week, a team that he torched for 25 fantasy points in Week 2. Pacheco has high-end RB2 usage with RB1 production over the past month. Denver is one of the worst rush defenses in the league. Pacheco didn't get much going in their first matchup in Week 5, but he's an easy top 12 play regardless because of this matchup. I've got Kenneth Walker coming in at RB12. So top 5 usage with RB17 production over the past month. He hasn't necessarily been running very efficiently lately. Cleveland has been stingy to running backs, and they were really stingy to running backs heading into their matchup against the Colts, but they got gashed by JT and Zack Moss. All it takes is one for Walker to get home. He's a fringe RB1 with upside. And then at RB13 here, I got Jonathan Taylor. In week 6, JT got up to a 50-50 split with Zack Moss. Moss is now nursing a couple injuries. JT looked awesome against the Browns, finishing the day with 21 fantasy points. This week, he's in a tough matchup against New Orleans, but I expect play volume to be way up. I'm expecting another big week from JT. I'll pause. Any thoughts on that group, fellas?
Pacheco, again, I think another great spot for him. It's the Broncos, and the first matchup against them wasn't, super, super great, but nonetheless, I think he's just running super hot right now. I mean, the guy is finding his way into the end zone every week. Denver's allowed like the third most touchdowns to running backs and the most points to fantasy running backs this year. It's just like a good of a start as you can have for Isiah Pacheco. And so Raheem Mostert today, that's veteran rest day, or is it actually ankle?
He skips some Wednesdays because he's old. So I don't know.
Okay. That's good to know. That's good to know. I saw that and I got a little nervous on that end. Jonathan Taylor this week. I think I kind of like where your head's at here, being a little bit above ECR or expert consensus rankings. I really liked what I saw from him last week. I feel like he's getting his juice back a little bit.
I think so too. And I think this run game's great. And Zack Moss looks a little banged up. And I think JT is going to continue to get leaned on heavily. I think the Colts think they're a team that can compete now. And I don't think they're doing it without a healthy JT, in my opinion.
They're such a frisky team with Gardner Minshew at the helm.
They are.
They were fun and frisky with Richardson, but now they're kind of downgraded to just frisky. But man, they're frisky.
Week 1 was such a disaster with him too, and then like week 2 was just like the greatest show on turf. And I was like, "What happened? What just happened?" Like in the last 6 days, where this offense went from like pooping their pants every other play to like just absolutely lighting it up. It was pretty fun.
I don't get it. I don't. Oh, so the next batch of running backs I've got here at RB14, Bijan Robinson, Fantasy's most wanted. At RB15, Josh Jacobs. RB16, Rachaad White. I will explain that in a second. RB17, Derrick Henry. RB18, Deontay Foreman. RB19, Joe Mixon. RB20, Dameon Pierce. So we have some interesting characters here that I have ranked a little bit higher than some people are willing to rank them with on Fantasy Pros with expert consensus rankings. So Bijan Robinson, bizarre stuff, right? Like super bizarre with the headache situation.
It's the Tyler Algier show, dude.
I wouldn't be shocked if,
Arthur's quote today, dude,
comes out and rides Bijan after catching a ton of flack in the press for how he handled Robinson. Also wouldn't be shocked if this continues to be the dumbest three-headed committee in all of football, where CPAT, Algier, and Robinson are all touching the ball. Regardless, this is a tough matchup against the Titans defense that's really only given up 2 RB1 finishes this year. Bijan has a really strong role in the pass game, so he's going to be a borderline RB1 play when he's in the lineup. RB15, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs has the second most valuable role in all of fantasy with RB2 production. So he's really not hitting home, and it's probably because he hasn't scored a touchdown this year. You know the volume is going to be there, but this Lions defense has been incredibly stingy to running backs this season. Over the past 4 weeks, they've surrendered the second fewest points per game to the position. He has positive regression on his side at least, right? Like, hey, you're just going to have to get in the end zone one of these times, but I don't know if it's going to happen against this Detroit defense. RB16 is Rachaad White. I have him 4 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. He has RB22 usage with RB26 production over his last 4. The Bills have given up the 4th most fantasy points per game to running back over the past month. I'll say this, White doesn't look that great as a runner, but he looks awesome when he catches the ball out of the backfield. Like really dynamic player when he's a receiver. I don't know. If Tampa was ever going to get this run game going, it would be this week against the Matt Milano-less Bills defense. I have Derrick Henry here at RB17, so he has RB3 usage. I'll pause there. RB3 usage, but he has RB1 production. So the king is still the king, but the direction of the Titans,
Kinda.
I mean, dude, he rips off huge runs each week, but the direction of this...
He's like the prince right now. He's like the prince.
He's still a good player, and the direction of this Titans team is looking like a full-blown youth movement. Wouldn't be shocked if they eased off his usage to shop him before the deadline. Either way, Atlanta has been rough against running backs, surrendering the 5th fewest points per game to running backs over the past month. He's a frisky, risky. I don't know. He's probably a risky RB2 in my opinion. You just don't really know what's going to happen. I have D'Onta Foreman RB18, 6 spots ahead of ECR, and I know Roschon Johnson's coming back, but I don't care. I am done fading D'Onta Foreman. Every time this guy is given the bulk of the touches, he produces. It doesn't matter what jersey he's in. It doesn't matter if it's before an Achilles injury, after an Achilles injury. He's a highly effective and efficient runner. He should produce well versus a Chargers defense that is bottom 8 against running backs this year. RB19, Joe Mixon, top 8 usage with RB3 production. Textbook prime positive regression candidate that doesn't regress because he's ineffective. This guy refuses to regress his mean here. At this point, I wouldn't be shocked if Mixon scores 2 touchdowns against the Niners or scores 5 points. You're just praying for dump-offs from Burrow at this point. And then one of my biggest risers in all of my rankings, is it because I believe this? Is it because of hopium? Is it copium? I have Dameon Pierce here at RB20. If there was ever a week, fellas, for Dameon Pierce, ever a week to have his best game of the season, it would be this week against a Panthers defense that has given up the most points per game to running backs over the past month. And it involves Dameon Pierce coming off a bye with a healthy offensive line. I expect Devin Singletary to be involved, okay? But Pierce remains the lead back with the goal line work. Let's hope that O-line is healthy coming out of the bye week. So, fellas, what do you think about that batch of running backs there?
I've got a couple I wanted to touch on. Starting with Josh Jacobs, I'm pretty worried about him. It's just been really ugly this year. Just like taking a look at his week-by-week production, like started pretty slow, got better, and then has just like completely crashed and burned again. He went 9 points, 9.9, 11, 27.9, 19.9, 11.3, 5.1. It's just brutal. I don't think anyone respects their passing game whatsoever, which means he's consistently running into 7, 8 guys on a pretty consistent basis. He's finished outside of the top 20 RBs 5 out of 7 weeks now, and I just don't think it's really getting any better. To your point, the Lions rank 3rd best in terms of limiting fantasy points per game to the running back position. So, like, again, like this is another guy you probably have to start unless you've got an abundance of riches at like the hardest position in fantasy. But I don't think like Josh Jacobs is riding through you know, knight in shining armor this week. Like I think if you're getting 10 points from him this week, you're kind of celebrating. There's definitely positive regression coming in the touchdown category. Nearly had one last week that was called back. So like, you know, he's going to get in, but like it feels like the chips are certainly stacked against him. So that's a tough one. I want to touch on Derrick Henry real fast. Just in general, I think he's a fun buy low candidate right now with the trade deadline coming up. It may not be this week, but for some of you owners out there kind of just like looking to get a little frisky, shake up the roster, Derrick Henry is potentially a week and a half away from falling into an awesome fantasy landing spot. So I don't really have many thoughts about this week. I think the matchup isn't great. Atlanta has been pretty stingy, both running backs and wide receivers, but just something to monitor. And then you touched on D'Onta Foreman too. I have no idea what that split is supposed to be. No. When Khalil Herbert went on IR, the understanding was Roschon was going to get the bulk of the touches, but like Foreman was RB1 last week. Like we saw what he did. The dude looked like a grown man. So I don't know. My gut tells me it's probably close to 50-50 between the two of them, which, you know, probably pushes him into the high 20s or a low 20s, pardon. But I don't know, man. It's hard to fade this guy after what he did last week. So this is an interesting bunch, but I think there's plenty of upside sprinkled in here. So yeah, this is kind of a fun batch of RBs before we really get into like, you know, total just like
dust
doom. Yeah.
Keegan, you got anything to add before we go to the next batch?
Yeah, Rachaad White. Wanted to drop just some nuggets on him. You know, coming off season highs in targets, receptions, both 6 and 6, receiving yards. The Bills and some of the running backs they face this year, Travis Etienne, Devon Chain, Saquon Barkley, and Rhamondre Stevenson, obviously all very good running backs, but they've all scored at least 13.8 PPR points in the past 4 weeks, and the Bills are allowing at least 4 receptions to a running back in 3 games in a row right now. And so you really want Rachaad White to hit him on the receptions. I think it's another good matchup despite his inefficient running. as a pass catching back. It's just a good spot for him. So I like that you have him here. It was a good highlight. The next guy, Joe Mixon, I think for me is just like looking at all efficiency measures. You could arguably say that he's maybe the worst running back in the NFL right now. He's up there. It's pretty bad. I actually had him as like a do not play this week, just in general. I know you probably want to, but I feel like it's safe going against SF this week. They probably have, some fire in their gut considering what happened this past primetime game. Shaun,
we don't talk about what Kirk did.
I'm not sure if I was here for the beginning, but I hope I didn't miss any Sam Darnold chatter in the intro.
There was some talk of Sam Darnold.
There was some.
Talk of Sam Darnold.
All right. Well, I think I had Joe Mixon just out as a sit. And then I have the Houston running backs in general as a start. I know a lot of people are probably thinking or have picked up Singletary already, but I really think this is a good get-right game for Dameon Pierce in general. I mean, Carolina's allowing 5.3 yards a carry, second most in the NFL. They've also allowed the most carries in the NFL on outside runs, and Dameon Pierce has doubled the total of outside runs, like designed outside runs from anybody else on the Houston Texans. So if there was ever a get-right game for him, it would be this one, like you said, and specifically for him and his role like as an outside rusher. So I like Dameon Pierce this week. He's been bad this year. It's a good spot for him to start. I like Rachaad White. I do not like Joe Mixon, but I think that's it I have on the notes for that batch.
Moving on to our next tier, Aaron Jones at RB21, Alexander Madison at RB22, Rhamondre Stevenson at RB23, James Cook RB24, Gus Edwards RB25, Darrell Henderson RB26, Kareem Hunt RB27, Najee Harris RB28, Javonte Williams RB29, Emari Demercado RB30.
What a group.
Yeah, no, like when you said Aaron Jones, Madison, Mondre, B, I smelt a stench in my nose. It's just like it just doesn't get me fired up at all.
You don't have a fire in your gut over this
no, like honestly, like some of the guys farther down, like I get more fired about like a Darrell Henderson or like a Emari Demercado. Like at least
that's just the new shiny toy. They're all not good.
Yeah, they just haven't really hurt me yet. Where the other ones, like I know, like
I have previous history with the other ones.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of what's going to happen.
Aaron Jones, he's still somehow not practicing.
What's happening with him?
I don't know.
He's not that old.
I don't know.
Dude. He's not that old.
Until we get an idea of what's going on with Jones's hamstring, expect to see a ton of A.J. Dillon. Minnesota's got a really good rush defense right now. They're holding running backs to 3 yards per carry. So you're just hoping for a touchdown. RB22, Alexander Madison. So Cam Akers was barely used against the Bears, but then he out-touched Madison against the 49ers. However, Madison remains a more effective and efficient running back with better fantasy usage even last game. Both backs they're not good, but Madison has a matchup against the Packers rush defense that has allowed the fourth most RB points over the past month. Madison's firmly in RB2 land. Rhamondre Stevenson, RB2 usage with RB3 production over his last four. Had a nice little pass catching resurgence against the Bills. Miami's been pretty frisky to running backs over the past 4 weeks, ceding the 9th fewest fantasy points to the position. So he's a risky RB2, but he has upside. James Cook had a really strong week 7. He had RB9 in expected fantasy points. He remains a really dangerous pass catcher, even downfield, which is great. Like Josh Allen's going to throw to a running back if he can run downfield routes. However, Tampa Bay has been pretty solid against running backs, but they have given up the 5th most receptions to RBs this year. It's a risky RB2 play with upside. Gus Edwards has emerged as the lead back in this offense. I have him at RB25 this week. He has a plus matchup against the Cardinals defense that has given up 27 fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 4 weeks. Darrell Henderson, RB8 usage in his first game back with the Rams. That's crazy. RB8 usage. He looked like the clear lead back. We all know McVay likes to ride a lead back. He always has. But hard to really get too excited about Henderson this week going up against a Dallas defense that's been incredibly stingy against running backs. So I've got Henderson at 26. Kareem Hunt here at RB27. Wednesday DMP, I think he should play. It might be just a rest day for a vet. I expect him to split carries pretty evenly with Strong, but he's going to see all the high-value touches, which are receptions and goal line work. This offense is a bit of a mess, and the Seahawks have been stout against the run over the past 4 weeks. He's a low upside fringe RB2. You're really hoping for a touchdown. I got Najee Harris here at RB28. I have him actually 3 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. Harris just turned in his best game of the season in terms of usage. He continues to split snaps with Warren. I don't know. Jackson's been strong against the run, but Najee looked good. He's, I think, a fringe RB2 at this point. Javonte Williams, RB29, RB11 usage with RB20 production in week 7 for Javonte. Managers have to be encouraged with his performance, but I've got him down 6 spots against expert consensus rankings this week because he has a matchup against a Chiefs defense that held him to 7 fantasy points in week 6. And then the last player in this tier, Emari Demercado versus the Baltimore Ravens. I have him at RB30. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. The Michael Scott vasectomy joke. That's what I feel like when I see Emari Demercado get removed from the lineup and brought back in as the starter. Really have no idea what happened there in week 6. He was the clear RB1 going up against a pretty tough Seattle front in week 7 and did well, and he had great RB2 usage. In week 8, he faces off against a Ravens defense that has given up the 10th most points per game to running backs over the last month. So I'll pause here. This is kind of the last range of guys that I feel comfortable starting. RBs 21 through 30. Any thoughts here before we go to the photo finish with the last group of guys?
Before Baltimore swings a trade for King Henry, I think the Gus Bus is prepared to leave the station one more time this week.
Wow. One last ride.
I'm all in on the Gus Bus for one last ride before they make a trade at the Halloween deadline.
It'll like the end of like the Fast and
The wheels on the bus go
end.
round and round to the tune of 15 touches and 144 yards and a touchdown last week.
Yeah.
Dude,
that 80-yard reception. He had that 80-yard reception, which was insane. And he got caught somehow. He should have scored easy. Should have been a 90-yard tutty. Oh, it was unreal.
Dude, this is a really good week for him. Arizona has allowed 4 backs to eclipse 100 rushing yards in the past 7 weeks. They're allowing over 26 fantasy points a game to opposing running backs. The threat of Lamar as a passer, will have to keep Arizona honest on defense. This is a good opportunity for some more Gus Bus. Like I said, the wheels go round and round again this week before King Henry's in that purple. Also, I think Kareem Hunt is kind of like a safe floor play again for this range. If you're struggling at running back, you don't know who to start. I think Kareem Hunt's another guy in this range that feels like a good option. Seattle's allowing, around 11.5 PPR points to running backs, which is pretty solid for a running back start, especially in this range. And Jerome Ford will be limited again. I don't think Kareem Hunt's really that hurt at all. He is banged up, but not hurt to the point where he won't play. But yeah, I think of this range, Gus and Kareem Hunt are 2 of my favorite starts for sure.
All right, boys, you ready to get to the real sicko stuff?
Yeah, let's take
Wait,
out the
Aidan,
trash.
are you telling me you didn't have a single start out of that range? How dare you?
No, I was gonna say my common theme with those is they're already pretty uncomfortable to start, but there's just some brutal matchups in there. You've got Aaron Jones against Minnesota, tough matchup. Mondre versus Miami, tough matchup. Cook versus Tampa, tough matchup. And these are all guys that I don't really want to start to start with. And now it's not only is the role not great, but the chips are stacked against you with a pretty stingy matchup. So it's
James Cook is the opposite of that Step Brothers meme where they're in the office. He's okay, the suits seem kind of fucked up. Because in the beginning of the season, we were
it seemed a little fucked up.
The 8th round draft capital seems kind of fucked up. But now it's starting to make a little bit of sense.
He's so good. He's so good. But it feels like the only way to have a good week is he's got to catch he's got to go for 50 plus in the passing game. Pretty much to have a decent game. They won't give him enough meaningful carries.
He took over a top 10 usage role last week, though. So just something to keep in mind. Latavius kind of got phased out. He's competing for less touches with our guy Dameon Harris on IR. So we'll see. I again, he's paid off at his draft capital, wherever you got James Cook, regardless.
Not a player to start, but just a player to monitor. I don't know if I'd call him a buy low candidate. This is a tough matchup, and maybe even after, but I like what I'm seeing from Javonte Williams as he gets healthier throughout the year. You're starting to see a little bit of old Javonte, and hey, maybe try and get him before this matchup. I don't know. I feel like that's a lower end RB in this range right now that I don't think is going to be being ranked 30 on a weekly rankings show by the time we get to the end of the season. So I think that's another candidate for somebody that I'm paying attention to. I'll be watching that game for sure.
Buy him after he scores 5 points this week. That's probably my recommendation.
It'll be too late if he goes off for 18 though out of nowhere.
Ooh, I will see. I will see. I will be drinking some milk if Javonte plays well this week. Okay, so here's the photo finish, me team. Here we go. RB32, Zack Moss. RB33, Chuba Hubbard. RB34, Justice Hill. RB35, Roschon Johnson. RB36, Miles Sanders. Our good friend Brian Robinson Jr., RB37, AJ Dillon, RB38, Devin Singletary, RB39, Tyjae Spears, RB40, RB41, Tyler Algier, RB42, Royce Freeman, RB43, Latavius Murray, and RB44, Pierre Strong. So Zack Moss, he's banged up.
Dang.
He's banged up, and he's losing work to JT. He still looked great against the Browns. I just think JT's going to take the lion's share of the touches. I wouldn't start him right now, especially considering that the New Orleans defense has surrendered the fourth fewest points to running backs over the past month. Chuba Hubbard, it looks like this is going to be like a 50-50 committee. I guess the Panthers aren't committing to Sanders because of how well Chuba has played. Houston's been relatively friendly to running backs this season. Super risky RB3 with RB2 upside if he gets the majority of the snaps. Justice Hill, I think he's the clear RB2 in this offense. He has fumbling issues. I would prefer if this offense went to Gus Bus. Roschon Johnson, he looks like he will clear concussion protocol this week. I expect Foreman to get the bulk of the touches. Wouldn't be shocked, though, if Johnson's very involved in the pass game, considering the T-bag is a check-down specialist. I've got Miles Sanders here at 36. I want nothing to do with Miles Sanders. He is healthy and practicing in full. Start at your own risk. Brian Robinson, he is my guy.
That was like a threat.
I'm good. I'm good. I've been out on Miles Sanders since day one. That's one thing I was right about.
Spooky.
I was wrong about Adam Thielen. We knew who you were, Miles Sanders. RB37, Brian Robinson is the guy I'm probably down on the most this week. I have him 9 spots lower than expert consensus rankings. He's just slowly losing work each week. He's maintained his goal line job, which is great. But however, the Eagles defense has been a brutal matchup for running backs. Start at your own risk. Mr. Farm Simulator, AJ Dillon, looks like he will maintain a strong role in this backfield. He was decent in a cake matchup against Denver this week. Minnesota continues to make life hard for running backs. I would look somewhere else. You got Devin Singletary, who is Fantasy Twitter's favorite lottery ticket to scratch this week. They've got him at RB39 against Carolina. I've got him 4 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. I've been doing some research. I think he's definitely going to be involved in this backfield. I just really doubt he takes over. He saw more touches than
I'm not buying into that.
Pierce last week. I still think he's going to see 30 to 40%. I've seen D'Amico Ryan say they want to play complementary football where Singletary complements Dameon Pierce. However, Devin Singletary does not get goal line touches. So we're starting Pierce, boys. RB40, Tyjae Spears. Please don't start Tyjae Spears, even though he's electric. Just keep him in the back of your mind. Tyler Algier, I don't know, man. Is he the RB1?
Crazy that you have Atlanta Falcons starting running back all the way down here in the 40s. That is insane.
What a bargain.
He's a TD-dependent flex play. Royce Freeman's the clear RB2. Latavius Murray, clear RB2. And then Pierre Strong. Wouldn't be shocked if Pierre Strong had a nice week. Really wouldn't be shocked, but I wouldn't start Pierre Strong.
I think his role is going to be like solely on like a change of pace thing and also some special teams. I know that's why they liked him in Cleveland. Like they've mentioned a lot, like his role on special teams and stuff like that. So I don't really think he's going to get too involved. That's kind of why I'm also high on Kareem Hunt this week as a good start because he's kind of got like a singular role. He found his way into almost not a workhorse role.
Got a lot of touches.
He's got a lot of just touches. Being Pierre Strong. He just skipped all the offseason and found himself in a feature back role somehow backward.
What do we have here?
I have some best ball teams with Pierre Strong on them, and I'm not proud of that. But
piece of candy, and he just fell
starting
into
running back role.
I don't think they're gonna give Hunt 70% of the touches though. I think they're just gonna. I think they want to keep Hunt fresh. So I think Pierre Strong's gonna play, dude. So. I could easily see him being a higher rank. I'm not going to sit here and flag plant Pierre Strong. I'm just not doing it. But that's it for running backs before we jump to wide receivers on our next episode. Fellas, you got anything to say to the mean team before we hop?
No, I'm good. Happy I showed up.
Unreal. That was an unreal
great
surprise.
To have you.
With research too, he had great takes. Like give Keegan a hell.
No announcement. I just saw him I just saw him pop
I just
in.
started getting PTSD because I started hearing that ruffling mic noise that I hate so much. And I was like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh, Keegan's here.
I know.
He's here.
Oh, I know.
He's here. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Sam Darnold's going to start for the 49ers this week. I'm not emotionally prepared.
I'm so upset I missed
We
the
didn't
Sam
talk
Darnold
much.
chatter. Can
We're
we do
gonna
it
talk
again on
more
the
in
wide receiver episode?
We are. All right, everybody.
Yeah, let's have a dialogue.
Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.